Inspections find millions in stolen wages, saying employers are taking advantage of temporary workers. We look at new rules for recruiters and agencies. And Windsor is getting a gay bar. We look at where it's going and why people say it's needed now. Plus, Windsor Police embark on a new program. This one aims at improving officer mental health. This just-in deal is in place to save the Nexstar electric vehicle battery plant. Stellantis confirming this with a press release sent just minutes ago. The CBC's TJ Deer has been following this story and joins us live with more. So TJ, what's the latest?
Well, we don't know much about the details of the deal. Stellantis didn't give any specifics. All they said is that they signed a binding agreement that secures the future of the plant and that they're honoring, quote, the commitments that were made by the Canadian government to level the playing field with the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, end quote. Now, Unifor National released a statement as well saying they're pleased that a deal has been reached. Unifor National President Lana Payne said that she's proud that the union defended the future jobs that will be tied to the plant. The Office of Federal Industry Minister, Francois-Philippe Champagne, has yet to comment, saying they will release details of the deal when they're ready. Now, remember, construction stopped on the module portion of the facility about a month and a half ago. This was in response to the IRA, offering massive incentives to automakers to set up shop in the U.S. to make clean energy products. Stellantis' move came after Volkswagen struck a $13 billion deal worth of incentives with the Canadian government. Again, we don't have details of the deal, but in the meantime, construction continues on the cell portion of the battery plant and will eventually resume on the module portion with a deal now in place.
And TJ, a big part of this seemed to be the province coming to the table with more money. Yeah,
I mean, there initially seemed to be a disagreement over how much money Ottawa and Queen's Park would individually put up. Eventually, Ontario Premier Doug Ford told me that the province would commit to a third of any potential deal. Now, keep in mind, the original deal between upper governments and the company was $500 million each. The biggest part of this are the job numbers, though. 2,500 jobs for Windsor-Essex and more in spin-offs, and a promise to recharge the auto industry.
Thanks so much. The CBC's TJ Deer live in studio with this breaking news. Thanks, TJ. To get a better understanding of the impact of this deal, we're going to go live now to Flavio Volpe. He's head of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. Thanks so much for joining us on such short notice.
Hey, listen, great news. I come on for bad news, but definitely making myself available for the good news here.
So as we just heard, a deal has been reached. No details on the dollars attached, but what do you make of this announcement from the company?
I think what was in question here and what a lot of you viewers were thinking is they halted the construction on the module plant. They were kind of silent on where we would go on cell. I think the company's very clear here that we reached a deal for the entire footprint. The commitments they made in 2021 with both levels of government, they're going to be resumed. We're going to see, we're all monitoring for what the cost is. I think we all know that the cost direction is similar to the tax credit they get in the U.S. and what we saw at Volkswagen. But very importantly for me, is a company that has spent 95 years making vehicles in Windsor and across Ontario with footprints that draw across Canada is committed to the next 100 years here. And we're very happy. I said from the beginning consistently that I was confident that the federal and provincial government were going to come together, bring this over the line with the company on its full footprint, and that's what we heard today.
And you touched on the dollar figure, Flavio, and that's a big question people are having. What do you expect the figures to be?
Well, because these are production tax credits, and the company said it's going to make 400,000 batteries a year that are going to be going to Windsor and to Brampton, it's going to be around the Volkswagen figure. You know, the people who are concerned, like I am, like everybody is, on what that's going to cost the tax base. Batteries that are made here that are $25,000 each that get sold into Canadian production here generate commercial income taxes and personal income taxes, but also very importantly HST. And this production is going to raise its own taxes that are going to be part of that support. And so I'm very happy. This ends up being a very, very accretive net deal for Canada. And not just 2,500 new workers at that plant, but, you know, I represent hundreds of companies that provide parts into that production. We think that number is at least double, maybe triple in the supply chain.
And let's take a moment to look kind of long term. What did this public bargaining do you think, to Canada's reputation?
Well, it's kind of a weird moment. This was the last deal done before the IRA launched by the U.S. And so we thought it was a great deal. I think all parties thought it was a great deal in 2021. And then the U.S., in part, in response to how the heck did Windsor and not Detroit get that incredible footprint from Stellantis, came up with this tax credit scheme. And we had to respond. Part of the angst here is that this happened in public, but it's the only deal that straddles those two eras. And so it was very important for Canada and Ontario to close this deal again and for Stellantis to recommit so that there would be no long-term damage to the reputation of the region. Now that we have this footprint, and it is the center of battery production and research and two different vehicle production plants, battery vehicle production plants in Ontario, I think all of this is going to be forgotten, except for that business case study that everybody will do is what happens when a deal is announced and an entire government responds to a deal, forcing you to renegotiate.
Thank you so much, Flavio, for providing this kind of very last-minute reaction to some breaking news and some context here. We really appreciate that.
I hope everybody sleeps well tonight in Windsor. This is great news.
Thanks so much. Flavio Vope, head of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association. And our team is chasing this hard, so you can find up-to-date information on our website. More information to come, certainly, on our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. In other local news, provincial inspectors say thousands of workers are out millions of dollars in wages, saying employers took advantage of their temporary workers. Now there are changes coming to how things will operate. The CBC's TJ Deer has that story.
Labour Minister Monty McNaughton says the new rule is coming in after workers told the ministry that their rights were being violated. According to him, $4.2 million of what they call stolen wages were not paid to workers during 2020 and 2021.
This is completely unacceptable, and it stops now.
Further investigations by the province found that some workers were being paid below minimum wage, denied basic labor rights including overtime pay, and in some cases, having their passports seized. As part of the application process, agencies and recruiters will submit to a background check to see if health and safety violations previously occurred. Anyone who's proved to have violated workers will not be getting a license and will have 30 days to shut down.
If you're a scumbag out there treating workers like this, you have no place here in Ontario, and we want you out of the province.
Another part of the application process requires agencies and recruiters to pay a $25,000 bond, which the province can use to repay owed wages to workers. Offenders face penalties of up to $50,000 based on repeat violations, the highest in the country. A migrant worker advocate says this is a good part of the policy. However,
migrant workers must prove after the fact that they have in fact been exploited by recruiters or have had to pay fees for recruiters.
Husson says recruiters have skirted their requirements by not providing workers with receipts for seizing passports or recruitment fees.
And without that evidence, migrant workers are consistently unable to actually gain their rights or repay or get back the money they're owed.
Another migrant worker advocate raises the same concerns, especially for workers who have brought evidence forward, who he says occasionally face deportation.
The onus should not be in workers themselves bringing forward complaints, but the province investing in resources and ensuring there's anti-reprisals protections, particularly for temporary foreign workers and undocumented workers who are facing deportation for exerting their rights.
The province's policy was first announced as part of the Working for Workers Act in 2021, but will only be implemented on January 1st next year. TJ Deer, CBC News, Amherstburg.
Windsor police say the driver who caused a crash that shut down EC Row last night should not have been behind the wheel. Now, this here is the fiery aftermath of last night's collision, and this photo in this video was posted on Facebook shortly after the collision. This is near Central Avenue on EC Row. Police say nobody was injured. One driver didn't stop for slower traffic ahead, colliding with that vehicle and creating a chain reaction. The 32-year-old driver was ticketed for careless driving and for driving without a license. Windsor Police announced a new partnership today with the goal of improving officer mental health. Therapy dogs will be provided to employees in need because of the many challenges they face at work.
Would you like to get any of the other teams?
The dogs are provided by the St. John Ambulance Therapy Dog Program. They will visit various Windsor Police facilities to calm their members. Those in charge of health and wellness say the dogs' visits are especially important now.
A popular topic, right? Especially with this past year losing a number of police officers in Canada and Ontario specifically. That's in the backs of people's minds when they come to work, in the backs of their families' minds when they're leaving for work.
The dog visits will happen every 2 weeks, and they are expected to begin this month. A new bar set to open in Windsor will fill a void. Some say there's a need for a gay bar in the city to serve as a safe space. This fall, there are plans to open up a restaurant and bar called The Well. Windsor once had LGBTQ bars several years ago, and many are excited that one is coming back.
It was great because everybody could come together and we had a gay space.
Wendy Nicholson remembers many LGBTQ bars over the last 40 years. More importantly, she says they were safe spaces, but all that have since closed.
There is a need for one because we do like to have our space where we can go and be ourselves.
What's now known as the Playhouse Gentlemen's Club was once a gay bar, first opening up more than a decade ago as the Happy Tap Tavern and changing to Legends 2012 before closing. Nicholson and many others have fond memories of that place.
Mother Mary behind the bar, keeping everybody in in line. Pool tables, dancing, drag shows, queens and kings of drag.
For me, I didn't know anybody when I first moved to Windsor, so it was a great space for me to be able to meet people. And actually, from just being able to go to those spaces, I met my partner of 25 years. I met friends that I've had for over 20 years. Like, it's just a great opportunity to do that, and I think it's good for others. So,
the Happy Tap. I was so grateful that that was my first bar I ever went to because it established that there is support out there. There is a community. There are people that I can learn from and that are there to be there for me.
And I think it's just nice to just have a place where everyone's just happy and celebrate each other and people looking at you as normal rather than, oh, they're different because they're part of the community.
This new bar and restaurant is called The Well. The owner tells CBC News that it will hopefully open in the fall here on Erie Street, the first space of its kind that labels itself as an LGBTQ space open to all walks of life in the last several years. But recently, some say the LGBTQ community is facing more challenges. Parents in Windsor have protested they don't want gender discussed in schools, and others oppose school board gender expression policies. People have also stolen pride flags, in one case right off the hospital wall. While across the border in states like Florida, anti-LGBTQ laws come into effect.
You don't want to be going anywhere and feel like you're always looking over your shoulder, like, is someone going to attack me? Is someone going to verbally abuse me, or harass me? So I think it's nice to have a place where you can just be free, be who you are, be authentic, and just live life how you're supposed to be.
As of recent, I think we have a lot more obstacles and a lot more aggressive hardships from certain groups of people that are purposefully trying to intimidate us. So I think the necessity for another bar and outlet for people to go to that's safe is important, unfortunately, because you do see that we are getting a diverse and inclusive community, but we have setbacks. And with the setbacks, I think we need to reinstate another happy place. Another happy tap, if you will.
Ramsey and Giselle Shaw, who you saw there in that story, are this year's ambassadors of Pride in Windsor, Essex. You may have seen Ramsey on Amazing Race Canada Season 8. He won that year, and Shaw is a trans woman who's also an Impact wrestler and on this year's Amazing Race Canada. They were both at an event today where Caesars Windsor Cares donated more than $12,000 to programs at the Windsor Essex Pride Fest. That money will be used to create a new weekly social program for people of all ages in the LGBTQ community.
For some of us, we have a social connection with others, but some of us don't have that opportunity where we could be not out, we could be in the county, or just not have the transportation to get to those kinds of things. With this program, we can be able to have some online programs as well as in-person programs to reach out to those that don't have the opportunity for those connections.
As we head into our first commercial break, let's check out the Detroit skyline here on a bit of a time-lapse light up with some colorful fireworks as people across the river celebrated July 4th. And after the break, we'll get your full local weather forecast, and then later in the show, we'll continue to bring you information on the breaking news around that deal reached for the battery plant right here in Windsor. Stay with us. We'll return now to that breaking news we first brought you at the top of the show. Stellantis and LG Energy say a deal has been reached to continue construction of the Nexstar battery plant in Windsor. And this news is just coming into our newsroom, certainly a developing story. A spokesperson for Stellantis confirming the news. Construction paused, though, at the plant in May for the module portion. This was because of the tax incentives in the United States. Now, we do not know how much money is tied to this deal. We're continuing to follow the story, and we'll have more details on our show and on our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, as they come in. Colette Kennedy joins us now for a live look at weather. Colette, our newsroom is buzzing with some breaking news. There isn't some breaking news in weather, though, that you didn't see coming, is there?
Well, I think we're all pretty aware that we're in this heat warning, right? So this is something we're still sitting with, and we have another day to get through. In terms of any breaking news, or at least something that you want to be kind of aware of, is that tomorrow, as we have a cold front approaching, then we got to start thinking about the risk of some active weather, some stronger storm development. So here we are, not just us, southern Ontario stretches into parts of Quebec and parts of northern Ontario under a heat warning. The criteria, by the way, is different for different parts of the country. And for Windsor, Essex, and Chatham, Kent, it's a little higher threshold that has to be met. And yet, nonetheless, here we are in that heat warning. So the current temperatures, 31 for Windsor, Goderich, Sarnia as well, Chatham, Kent at 29 now. But then we factor in the humidity, because we know it doesn't stop with the temperatures, right? It's what it feels like. And those humidex values very, very close to 40 here for Windsor. And that's when we start to talk about what that means in terms of discomfort. And once you get to 40, great discomfort and needing to avoid exertion. Always remembering to take it easy, try and get into the shade, air conditioning if you have that luxury, and also drinking lots of water and staying hydrated. And you never want to leave pets or people in a hot car, okay, because the danger's there. Now, what I'm showing you here is some of the active weather along that cold front that is going to be pressing towards us as we go through the day Thursday. You see all the lightning strikes in here too. Now, some of this will be winding down, but we may still have some stray showers that kind of push through in the overnight hours. Very isolated, because it really does kind of dry out through the overnight. But we know our atmosphere is not dry. We've got a lot of humidity, and that makes the air very buoyant. So once we get some kind of trigger or lifting mechanism, like a cold front coming in, that's when we can see more development of these thunderstorms or thunderstorm activity. So as we go through the night, just a few little sprinkles possible, but then tomorrow is when we see things kind of firing up. So towards midday and early afternoon, just want you to be aware and kind of keep your eye to the sky and knowing what's going on because of the risk of some of these getting stronger. Okay, and then once that goes through, we get into improvement and more comfortable conditions that we'll be experiencing. Temperatures overnight tonight, though, we're looking at 23 for an overnight low. I think that range will be 21 to 23. And then tomorrow, I've got us at 28. But as the timing of that comes in a little more quickly, perhaps that will keep that number down a bit. Still very humid. And then we have more improvement as we go into the week ahead and towards the weekend, and things a little more comfortable, at least, Jason.
Yeah, it's hot, and we know that heat is sticking around, Colette. But I do have to say, though, it is really refreshing to see a blue sky after all that smoke last week, something we took for granted.
If it's not one thing, it's another, right?
Yeah.
So the trade-offs, and you're quite right. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
Still to come, our reporter TJ Deere will be back live on the set here, giving us the latest about that deal reached to secure the battery plant in Windsor. Stay with us. Canada has joined 3 other countries in launching a case against Iran at the International Court of Justice. Along with the UK, Sweden, and Ukraine, Ottawa wants Iran held legally responsible for the downing of Ukraine Airlines Flight 752. The plane was shot down by Iran's Revolutionary Guard shortly after takeoff from Tehran in January 2020. All 167 people on board were killed, including 55 Canadians and 33 permanent residents. As CBC's Ashley Burke reports, it's a long-awaited development for the families of the victims here in Canada.
After a long, hard battle for those who died on Flight PS 752, families say they have new hope.
What we asked for the last 42 months was a day in court, and now we see that this is happening.
Hamid Ismailian's daughter Rira and wife Parisa died when Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps shot down the plane more than 3 years ago. He and other families have pushed Canada to take Iran to the International Court of Justice. Today, they got their wish.
This is a happy moment for the families. I just witnessed the families, they hug each other, they cry out of pain and joy at the same time.
Canada, along with 3 other countries that lost citizens, filed this new joint application that says Iran violated its obligations under the international treaty and failed to take all practicable measures to prevent the unlawful and intentional destruction of Flight PS 752.
Ladies and gentlemen,
families met to discuss the next steps. They want high-ranking Iranian officials investigated and prosecuted.
The judicial system in Iran is not independent, so what have been done so far is it has been just a sham trial.
The new application filed in court calls for Iran to be ordered to publicly apologize, fulfill its legal obligations, including prosecution or extradition of alleged offenders, and order full reparations for all injury caused.
I personally feel a slight relief in my heart, and I can, next time I go visit my loved ones' graves, I can tell them that we did it, we finally did it, and we're moving forward. We're still fighting for you. We haven't forgotten, and you're still with us.
A joint statement from the 4 countries, including Canada, involved in this new legal filing, say that Iran failed to hold a full, impartial, and transparent criminal investigation, and they hope that the International Court of Justice makes that happen. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
And we bring back TJ Deard now to talk about the deal that's in place to save the Nexstar electric vehicle battery plant. Stellantis confirming this with a press release within the last hour. So certainly breaking and a developing story. You've been following this throughout. So what is the very latest here?
Well, the phones are off the hook in the background. We can hear everybody. We're all trying to reach out, trying to get some reaction. We did connect with Unifor Local 444 President Dave Cassidy. He said that this is a, quote, milestone deal, emphasizing that this would save the 2,500 jobs directly tied to the plant as well as its spin-off jobs. He says he's not surprised that a deal would be reached, but he's thrilled all the same. And we heard Flavio Volpe earlier tonight saying that the important thing is that Stellantis is committed to the next century here in Windsor, having already been here for 95 years. Now, with all of this coming with the federal and provincial governments coming together to get a deal done.
Now, what do we still need to answer here? What voices and what angles will you be chasing next?
Well, we're still trying to find out how much with the dollar figure of this deal. We still don't know that, how much the entire deal is worth. We also are not sure how much the federal and provincial governments will spend on any potential deal. We've got calls in to elected officials at all 3 levels of government, federal, provincial, and municipal. We've yet to hear back from anyone. Now, we've also yet to hear back on when construction will be resumed on the module portion of the facility. So that's still working on. We're still working on that, but again, we'll bring you all the details as they come in.
And TJ, since you've been covering this kind of from where it started, some observations, I guess, because there's been a lot of finger pointing between both sides of provincial and federal governments before we got this deal. Yeah, that's part of what the initial standoff was about. How much would Ottawa and Queen's Park put up? But we'll have to wait and see how much that is. Okay. We will check our website for more on this breaking and developing story. That's it for us here at CBC Windsor News. Thank you so much for watching. Again, head to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. We'll be updating our story throughout the evening on this developing breaking story about Stellantis and the battery plant. Thanks so much. Have a great night.